All right. We have our poet laureate of Orange County, Robert Milby, who is our Johnny Appleseed, the proliferator of such progeny of voids, spread out all upon the east side and the upside and the downside, the Bronx. Hey, you talking to me? Hey, Robert. So Robert's going to grace us, and then I'll hit you with a song and throw you alls out.
Thank you. I feel like I'm at the 4 points.
5.
5? No, there's only 4. No, I know there's 5. All right, just a few birthdays and death days, and for those who escaped, they missed this. Going back to the 8th, which was just this past Sunday, I think. Siegfried Sassoon, born in England in 1886. Alfred Jarry, born in France in 1873. Some very interesting writing concerning Jarry and his bicycle, and this is in the 1890s. Antonin Dvorak, born in Czechoslovakia in, well, that's not what it was called back then, 1841. Also, the 8th of September is the anniversary of the birth of Patsy Cline in 1932. The 9th, born in Brooklyn, Adelaide Crapsey in 1878. Stefan Mallarmé died in 1898. Now this guy hung out with Beethoven, Clemens Brentano. He was a poet, and Beethoven paid court to his sister. This poet was born in 1778 in Germany. It is also the anniversary of the birth of Leo Tolstoy in Russia in 1828, the great Tolstoy. We also have on the 9th of September, Sonia Sanchez, an American poet born in 1934. On the 10th, Franz Werfel, born in 1890. Hope you've heard of him. Hilda Doolittle, 1886, born in Pennsylvania. William Everson, another poet who's unfortunately forgotten, 1912. Mary Oliver, born in 1936. I think she died last year, didn't she? And Hudson Valley poet Lynn Hoynes, who now lives in Utah with family. The 11th, 9/11. D.H. Lawrence, born in England, 1885. American poet Merrill Moore, born 1903. New York City poet Jim Carroll's death at age 60 in 2009. And American poet Reed Whittenmore, born 1919. The 12th of September, Irish poet Lewis MacNeice, born in 1907 in Northern Ireland. I guess that makes him a British poet, right? Michael Ondaatje, born 1943. Pablo Neruda's death at age 69 in 1973. Robert Lowell died in 1977 at age 60 on the 12th. Today, Friday the 13th, British poet and playwright James Shirley, 1596. Clara Schumann, 1819. Clara Wieck. And the last birthday I'll mention, only the younger people will recognize this fellow, Mel Torme, born in 1925. The Velvet Fog. You're too young to remember.
All right.
Yeah. Here's one by the great war poet Siegfried Sassoon. Autumn. October's bellowing anger breaks and cleaves the bronzed battalions of the stricken wood, in whose lament I hear a voice that grieves for battle's fruitless harvest and the feud of outraged men. Their lives are like the leaves, scattered in flocks of ruin, tossed and blown along the westering furnace, flaring red. O martyred youth and manhood overthrown, the burden of your wrongs is on my head. Siegfried Sassoon. People are typically used to reading his war poetry. That's clearly a war poem, but I think that one's appropriate. because it is not as graphic as his other poems. Here's one by Louis MacNeice. This is from 1936. Now that the shapes of mist like hooded beggar children slink quickly along the middle of the road, and the lamps draw trails of milk in ponds of lustrous lead, I am decidedly pleased not to be dead. Or when wet roads at night reflect the clutching, importunate fingers of trees, and windy shadows lunge and flounce on the windscreen as I drive, I am glad of the accident of being alive. There are so many nights with stars or closely interleaved with battleship gray or plum, so many visitors whose Buddha-like palms are pressed against the window panes where people take their rest, whose favor now is yours to screen your sleep. You need not hear the strings that are tuning for the dawn, mingling, my dear, your breath with the quiet breath of sleep, whom the old writers call the brother of death. Louis MacNeice. Some of you may know this one. This is a more, it's more often anthologized a few years before. This is also Louis MacNeice. Sunday morning. Down the road, someone is practicing scales. The notes like little fishes vanish with a wink of tails. Man's heart expands to tinker with his car, for this is Sunday morning, fate's great bazaar. Regard these means as ends, concentrate on this now, and you may grow to music or drive beyond Hindhead anyhow. Take corners on two wheels until you go so fast that you can clutch a fringe or two of the windy past, that you can abstract this day and make it to the week of time, a small eternity, a sonnet self-contained in rhyme. But listen, up the road, something gulps. The church spire opens its 8 bells out, skulls mouths, which will not tire to tell how there is no music or movement which secures escape from the weekday time which deadens and endures. Louis MacNeice. I had mentioned a great American poet who was all but forgotten after her death, and Adelaide Crapsey. It was Carl Sandburg who published some of her poems, I think in the 30s. He assisted in publishing her poems. He wrote a poem for her, and it seemed to save some of her reputation. A lot of great poets, as you know, are forgotten. She changed the structure of the Cinquain, the 5-line poem. This is from 1911. November night. Listen. With faint, dry sound, like steps of passing ghosts, the leaves, frost crisped, break from the trees and fall. Autumn. Fugitive, wistful, pausing at edge of her going, autumn the maiden turns, leans to the earth with ineffable gesture. Ah, more than spring skies, her skies shine tender and frailer, bloom than plum bloom or almond lies on her hillsides, her fields misted, faint flushing. Ah, lovelier is her refusal than yielding who pauses with grave, backward smiling, with light, unforgettable touch of fingers withdrawn, pauses low, vanishes, fugitive, wistful. Adelaide Crapsey. All right, just a few of mine. And this is more of a summer poem, but I haven't read it in a long time. Back in the day, it's all good. It's all good, she said, "It's all good." The young woman responded to the postal clerk, interaction replete with slang, misuse of similes, and G-dropping. I paused in my mail preparation to listen to her indirect, passive-aggressive, paranoid digressions as her boy and girl played with mailers and postal envelopes. I knew she was a college graduate. I knew she had set aside career to stay-at-home mom her young family after years of happy selfhood. Is it all good? She checked her phone in a flurry of quick cryptograms, turning nouns into verbs, default proxy talk, hypnotized, half asleep. She glanced at her phone as the clerk spoke. "But it's all good." It was all very good. Is it all good for poor children in her own country as she leaves the post office parking lot in a luxury SUV? Is it all good in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen? Is it all good for the children of Gaza as their brethren poke sticks at an angry lion and the carnivore eats families and homes? Is it all good in Afghanistan, in the hungry days of Appalachia, the thirsty summer in Detroit? Was it all good after September 11th, when Bush sent men and women to Afghanistan, then Iraq, less than 2 years later, to explode and murder, destroy and plunder? So, was it all good back in the day? Which day? Whose day? When? So, she orates mostly like, it's like, they're like, he's like, she's like, in the mall, at the school, in the car, in the handheld AI re-education center. Will she remember that she was like in the post office back in the day? Her children were there on that hot summer afternoon. They weren't left alone in the hot car. I was there. The clerk was there. Was the mother even there back then? And how many texts did she get? Yeah. I know. Yeah. Here's a brand new piece I just finished on the 11th. Rain on a September morning. Sunflower yellow powder, honey-scented late summer. The glass vase on the kitchen table was my mother's. The family's house left to us. A colder season shops at a thrift store, clothing for early autumn to arrive in 3 weeks' time. Cooler breezes in canned rain build bubbles in puddles, quickly bursting the tiny globes as they float. A lone yellow walnut leaf dislodges in mist, floats to the wet and darkened grass. All right, just 2 more. Then we'll release you into the wild while Hayden will play, and we'll release you into the wild. All this talk about hurricanes. Irene is the word peace. Hurricane Irene, late August 2011, trial in absentia. 1. Omen. Poseidon's daughter knows no peace. In her long, destructive trip from her home, she ripped trees from their summer beds, stole electricity to fuel her rage, threatened tornadoes from her thespian stage. And here, in upstate New York, she dares whisper just outside my window, the screen no impediment to her wet lips, teasing me before showing her fangs and ire. 2. Inquisition. Did you plan your path of uprooted houses, ruined gardens, and drowned cars near Katrina's anniversary? We of the storm cleanup response accuse you, fleeing banshee, of taking over 40 human lives, weak, unknowing mortals who, despite preparation, would not yield to your impressive power. We, bailing out our basements and burying our dead, shoveling mud and stones from backyard sandbars, curse you in your wake, damn you to cloud and wind oblivion as you did our fellow countrymen and animals. All right, one more. I know you have the hook from the Apollo. Where is it? All right. All the way from the Apollo Theater. Night Noise. This is from Gothic Orange, my most recent collection. Postpartum rain, late summer, lawns of rusted steel wool, from the parched and cracked skin of fields, now vernal soft once more. Secret crickets lead the meditation as tree frogs recite call and response. She lies abed, open windows, curtains utter secrets, flags and banners on manners in night's kingdom. The white goddess sleeps in a nursery of autumn's clouds, despite days left to walk along the path, over a meadow, to a forest, in a wardrobe change. Dripping rain deceives as footsteps of a lone pedestrian walking because enigma in young fog's embrace. She discerns raindrops upon the shingles of an old porch roof. The pause is a strange and lovely maiden standing beneath the window as another late summer selects the gray fabric of her cool cloak of woven night. Thank you.
Here's your ride.
There goes my ride. He couldn't wait for 1 second. Thank you, Hayden. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.